The Middle Woodland period was a time in North American prehistory with lots of long distance exchange of goods, interaction between peoples, and highly visible burial practices. In southern Ohio and the Illinois River Valley, what is known as Hopewell was occurring, with materials and objects being brought in from as far as Yellowstone and the construction of mounds and geometric earthworks. However, the trends present in the Middle Woodland period took place all across eastern North America. Another place where Hopewell-like practices were occurring was northern Alabama. The burial tradition here, which often included many imported goods, is termed as Copena. The people of the Copena burial tradition and those Middle Woodland people in the region used a style of biface called a Copena point, sharing a name with the burial tradition and both being from the same culture. The material I am using for making my Copena point is a piece of heat-treated Fort Payne chert. This material has many varieties and occurs throughout Tennessee and northern Alabama. Even with heat treatment, this particular piece was prone to crumbling and step fractures. Some of these were removed by flakes snapped from the other edge, taking off the step fracture, while some others were removed using a pressure flaker with a flattened copper tip. The Middle Woodland period begins around 50 BCE and continues to 400 CE, though these dates vary regionally. General lifestyle changes that occurred during the Middle Woodland period include the use of pottery becoming widespread and the intensification of agricultural activity. While people cultivated plants, these served to complement rather than replace food resources from hunting and gathering. The types of crops grown by people during the Middle Woodland period include chenopodium, sunflower, peppo squash, sumpweed, Iraqi knotweed, maygrass, and little barley. Other plant crops, such as maize, did not become dietary staples until the late Woodland period. Another feature of the Middle Woodland period is the construction of mounds and earthworks. While both were used for communal ceremonies, the large earthworks, often in geometric shapes, were not used for burying the dead. Conical and elongated mounds, however, were. People during this period sought and exchanged exotic materials, which were often interred with the dead as grave goods. These goods were often sourced from great distances from where they were modified and ended up in the archaeological record as artifacts. Some of these materials include obsidian from the Yellowstone region, copper from the Great Lakes, marine shell from the Gulf Coast, mica from Appalachia, grizzly bear teeth from the far west, and much more. The spread of exotic materials and the idea for making mounds seems to have been a package that was adopted by many cultures around the eastern U.S. during the Middle Woodland period. This package of ideas, expressed through artifacts and mounds, is what most archaeologists call Hopewell. While not a culture, Hopewell goods and earthworks seem to be most vibrant in certain places, particularly in southern Ohio and the Illinois River Valley. Other regional Middle Woodland cultures took to these Hopewell trends, with Copena in the south being one of these Hopewell expressions. The word Copena is an amalgamation of the words copper and galena. Both materials are present in Copena assemblages and were exchanged in from extra-regional locations. Copper originated from the northern Great Lakes region and sometimes from the Appalachia region. Galena is the natural mineral form of lead sulfide and commonly occurs as irregular crystals. Compositional testing of galena artifacts by archaeologists shows that the source for Copena galena artifacts was obtained from the upper Mississippi Valley region of Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. Copper was widely exchanged by Middle Woodland peoples and shows up commonly in Hopewell and Copena contexts. Galena is present in Middle Woodland contexts in those sites in Illinois and Ohio, but the people associated with Copena accrued far more of this material than other people during this time period. Since both copper and galena lay along a strategic north-south exchange corridor, they could have been exchanged together. Copena copper artifacts include ear spools, celts, bracelets, and more. Copena galena artifacts occurs in natural pieces, ground spheres and discs, and in rare instances were fashioned into beads or ground into a powder that was used to fill copper ear spools. Most commonly, galena served as a pigment, which was produced by grinding the substance into a powder, which produced galena spheres and discs as a byproduct. Copena points are unnotched and unstemmed. They are somewhat triangular in shape, with recurvate edges with a base that sometimes flares outward. The base of these points is straight to slightly incurvate to excurvate, and has basal thinning, with edge grinding to accommodate lashes for hafting. They were often made from Tennessee chirps, such as Fort Payne, Dover, and Buffalo River chirp. The formations for some of these chirps extends down into Alabama from Tennessee. Although local chirps were used whenever people made Copena points in the past. These points were likely used as both projectile tips and as knife blades. Larger examples were probably used as knives, and smaller examples were probably used as projectiles. When resharpened to a smaller size, former knife blades could be repurposed as projectiles for lattice darts, although some were so used up that they were discarded without being repurposed. The Copena burial tradition is prevalent in the Middle Tennessee Valley of Alabama. Copena burial mounds were conical and relatively small in size. The mound itself was constructed over subsoil burial pits. Sometimes secondary burials occurred in the mound fill after the mound had been built over the primary burial. The soil used to construct the mound was of sand or clay. The manners in which people were buried in these mounds varied. Some were flexed burials, where the joints were bent in certain positions. Others, bundle burials of people's bones, and even others were cremations. Some of the subsoil burial pits were lined with clay, logs, or bark. Besides those elaborate artifacts made from copper or galena, Copena people used exotic materials such as marine shell for cups and beads, greenstone for making celts, and steatite for making elbow pipes. The final pressure flaking along the edge of the blade defines the recurve shape of the point, exaggerates the basal flare, and makes it sharp. The final step is to abrade the basal area, which prevents any lashings from being cut by a sharp edge.